All right, let's just dive right in with one of the biggest, most mind-bending questions you could possibly ask. What if everything around you, your life, your memories, this very moment, isn't actually real? What if it's all just a simulation? We're going to unpack that whole idea today. So, let's just put it out there. Are you, right now, listening to this, living inside a super advanced computer simulation? I mean, is everything you see, touch, and feel just an incredibly detailed rendering, a program run by some civilization way, way down the line? It sounds like something straight out of a movie, right? Like The Matrix. But here's the crazy part. This idea is being taken very, very seriously by some really smart people. And the reason why isn't fantasy. It's just a logical look at how fast our own technology is moving. And this quote from Elon Musk really nails it. I mean, think about it. Just a few decades ago, the cutting edge of video games was Pong. Seriously, two little lines and a dot. And now, we've got these massive, photorealistic virtual worlds where millions of people are playing at the same time. The leap is just staggering. So, here's the thought experiment. Just assume we keep getting better. We don't even have to assume a fast rate of improvement, just any improvement. What do our simulations look like in 1,000 years, 1,000,000? At what point do they become completely, utterly indistinguishable from the real world? Okay, so before we get too carried away with future technology, you gotta understand that this whole is reality real thing is not new. Not at all. The simulation theory, it's really just the 21st century Silicon Valley version of a question that philosophers have been wrestling with for thousands of years. The language has changed from caves and demons to code and pixels, but the core question, that's been with us for a very, very long time. And you can really see that historical thread here. I mean, you go all the way back to ancient Greece, around 380 BC, and you have Plato's allegory of the cave. He imagined prisoners chained up, only ever seeing shadows on a wall and thinking that was reality. Sound familiar? Then you jump forward to 1641. The philosopher René Descartes comes along and poses this idea of an evil demon who could be tricking him, creating an entire fake universe just for him. And then, much more recently, in 1989, the physicist John Wheeler floated this wild idea he called it from bit. The notion that at its most fundamental level, the universe isn't made of stuff, it's made of information, of bits, like computer. And all of that brings us to the year 2003. This is the moment where everything changes. It's when a philosopher named Nick Bostrom took this ancient question and turned it into a rock-solid logical argument. This is really when the simulation hypothesis went from just a cool thought experiment to something that you could argue with, well, with math and probability. Now, what's really clever about Bostrom's paper is that he doesn't actually say, hey, we are definitely in a simulation. Nope. Instead, he presents what's called a trilemma. He says, look, given what we know, one of these three, and only one of these three possibilities, has to be true. It's like a logical trap, and it's designed to really make you think. Okay, so here are the three options on the table. Option 1, extinction. Basically, civilizations like us, we just never make it. We wipe ourselves out or get wiped out before we ever develop the technology to run these super powerful simulations. Option 2, disinterest. Okay, so maybe we do survive and become super advanced, but we just don't care about running simulations of our past. Maybe it's unethical, maybe it's boring, who knows? They just don't do it. But, and this is the absolute kicker, if option 1 and option 2 are both false, what are you left with? Option 3, we are almost certainly living in a simulation. Because if civilizations do survive and they are interested in running these ancestor simulations, they won't just run one. They'll run thousands, maybe billions of them. And in that scenario, the number of simulated people, simulated consciousnesses, would be astronomically higher than the number of real people in the one base reality. So just by pure statistics, the odds would be overwhelming that you and I were one of the simulations.
Yeah, and just to be super clear about what we're talking about here, an ancestor simulation isn't like The Sims, okay? We're talking about a simulation so perfect, so high fidelity, that the people inside it, they're conscious, they have thoughts, fears, dreams. They think they're real, because from their perspective, they are real. And the civilization running this whole thing, Bostrom calls them post-human. I mean, just imagine a version of humanity so far beyond us, with computing power that would seem like magic. That's who's supposedly at the key.
All right, so that's the philosophical case, and it's pretty compelling, right? But the next logical question is, can we prove it? Can we move this out of the philosophy department and into the physics lab? Well, some scientists are actually trying to do just that. They're literally hunting for glitches in the matrix.
So the basic idea behind this whole search is pretty simple. Think about any computer program or video game. No matter how good it has limitations, right? It runs on hardware, it has a resolution, it has rules. So if our universe is a program, maybe, just maybe, we can find the edges. We could find the limitations of the hardware it's running on, or see the pixels, or even find snippets of the underlying code baked into the laws of physics themselves. And this has led to some really wild ideas for what to look for. For example, some physicists are looking for a pixelation of spacetime itself. Like, if you could zoom in far enough, would reality stop being smooth and become a grid, like a computer screen? Others point to quantum mechanics. You know that weird rule that a particle doesn't really exist in one place until you look at it? Well, what if that's just a processing shortcut? To save computational power, the universe doesn't bother rendering the details until a conscious observer actually needs them. But maybe the weirdest, most specific clue is from physicist S. James Gates. He was working on these incredibly complex equations for supersymmetry and found something that looks exactly like the error-correcting codes that we use in browsers and computers to make sure data doesn't get corrupted. How weird is that?
Okay, so it's easy to get carried away with all that, but we have to pump the brakes. Because for every one of these tantalizing clues, there's a really powerful counter-argument. The debate is far, far from over, and the case against us being in a simulation is in many ways just as compelling.
The first, and maybe the biggest, argument against the theory comes down to one thing: raw computing power. The problem is that simulating our universe might not just be hard, it might be physically impossible.
So a couple of physicists actually did the math on this, and what they found is kind of a showstopper. They calculated that to perfectly simulate what's happening at a quantum level for just a few hundred electrons, you would need a computer made of more atoms than currently exist in our entire universe. Let that sink in. The computer needed to simulate a tiny piece of reality would have to be bigger than reality itself. It's just not possible.
And then you get into this really tricky philosophical problem. It's called the infinite regress. Okay, so let's say we are in a simulation. Fine. But what about the universe our creators are in? Couldn't they be in a simulation too? And couldn't their creators also be in a simulation? You see the problem. It just keeps going and going and going forever with no actual original base reality at the bottom. It just doesn't solve the fundamental question of where everything came from.
And all this kind of leads back to a classic principle in science and philosophy called Occam's razor. The idea is basically that the simplest explanation is usually the right one. So think about it. The theory that our reality is, well, just reality, requires one assumption, that reality exists. The simulation hypothesis, you have to assume there's a base reality and that a civilization evolved there, and that they developed incredible technology, and that they decided to run ancestor simulations. You see? It's just a much, much more complicated explanation. Isn't it simpler to just believe that what we see is what we get? So, where does that leave us? We've got a really compelling argument for the simulation and some equally strong arguments against it, and there's no smoking gun on either side. So maybe we should ask a different question. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that it's true. We're in a simulation. So what? Does it actually matter?
And this is where thinkers like David Chalmers bring up a really profound point. Basically, he argues that a simulated reality is still a real reality. Think about it. Does it matter if the chair you're sitting on is made of fundamental particles or lines of code? You're still sitting on it. The happiness you feel, the pain you feel, the love you have for other people, that's all happening inside your consciousness. It's your experience. And that experience is real no matter what the ultimate substrate of reality is made of.
And this might be the final answer, at least from a scientific perspective. The whole idea might just be unfalsifiable. We can't prove it's false. I mean, think about it. What if we run an experiment and find proof? Well, the simulators could have just programmed that proof in for us to find. What if we find no proof at all? Well, that doesn't mean anything either. It could just be a really, really good simulation with no glitches. It's a perfect logical circle, which means we can't really test it. And that pushes this whole conversation right back where it started, in the realm of philosophy. So we're left with this. Your experience of living your life, that's real. The people you love, the choices you make every single day, that's all real. So in the end, does it really change anything if the building blocks of all that are atoms or bits? Does it make your next decision, your next conversation, any less meaningful? I'll leave you with that to think about.